multiple messages from other dimensions, mind-sucking aliens. Have you heard of that? Right?
Have you ever had an opportunity to write up a riddle with a shredder?
Hello and welcome to the Psychic Guys. Tonight we're going to carry on with our Q&A questions because we didn't have time to get through them all last time. We got some great questions tonight, and I think if we run out of those, we're just going to chat and ramble about remote viewing, and hopefully that'll be interesting too. So our very first question is, for each of you, how much do you use remote viewing to make life decisions?
Ooh. I mean, I can go first if you want. I'm just trying to think. I've never done a personal remote viewing session for myself, life skill related, but I do now use because I'm part, as you guys know, part of Future Forecasting Group. I do now start to take note of what we get with the crypto RV sessions and use that to make investments. We had a target about 8 weeks ago called SUI, SUI, and we all had amazing data on it. I'd never heard of it before, and I was like, I don't know, maybe data looks like it's going to do really well, but I faltered. I sat on it and didn't do anything with it, and since then it's gone up from 40 cents to $2.20. So
Nice.
Dick put a load of money on it and made a load of money, and I didn't, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't. So I do, not all the time, but when the data looks good and the property looks good, I have to be honest, I am starting to take notice of what we're getting in there and putting small chunks of change on it when I can.
Josh, how about you?
A little bit here and there. I wouldn't say that it's like my first choice. I'll occasionally task out, like, let's say 5 years into the future, or let's talk to the version of me that successfully purchased a house. But for the most part, I kind of just go off of whatever information I have already. And if it's a situation that feels especially dire, I'll do it as a sort of like Hail Mary. And I know some people like to, when they try to set up predicting their future, they try to do ARV. I specifically don't ARV my own future. I task that as a direct sort of thing.
Yeah, leave it open to whatever might happen. I've used it. I expect I've used it more than once, but I can remember using it once years ago for like what career should I aim towards, because I don't want to be a software engineer anymore. And the data I got back was all just like all this esoteric symbolism and like the Masonic square and compass and all this spiritual magic stuff, and it was like, oh, I guess I'm going to be a wizard then. So that was pretty good. I suppose not so much using it for making life decisions, but for better understanding life situations where you don't know what's going on with someone, or you sort of want to know what's going to happen and have some extra data to feed into your decision, rather than being like, oh, am I going to buy this car or that car?
Yeah. So the smaller things rather than the bigger things, really, then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I use psychic abilities for small things the whole time, because it doesn't matter if it's wrong, does it? But remote viewing can be wrong. It should just be one data point, not shouldn't bet the farm on it. But I use it for choosing like food and drink and gifts, and
I'm a big fan of doing that as well.
It saves a lot of time, doesn't it? I've never had anybody, go, oh, you chose me the wrong sandwich. Works fine. So
I find a lot of it, like, I don't necessarily remote view, like I don't set up a target for it unless I'm like handing it to someone else. It'll be more of just a classical psychic. I'll try to get a vibe on it.
Yeah, I do that sort of thing a lot. But again, in situations where it doesn't matter, or I'm not going to have to act on it. Like I do that when I'm driving. I went out to get some onions earlier, and there's a really thick fog out tonight. Like you can't see where you're going at all. And I was driving up the hill, and it's a bit like tense because you can't see that far in front of you. And then the headlights of the truck appear, and it's like, oh shit. And then I thought, am I going to see any more cars? And I was like, oh yeah, there's going to be one right at the top of this hill, and nothing until then, and no like people stumbling about in the road in dark clothing or anything. So then I just chilled out, and there was one car at the top of the hill, and it was right, you know. But yeah, I wouldn't use that as a life or death decision making tool.
That's actually the whole life or death aspect actually kind of is what turned me off from using it as a primary source. There was a training exercise I did in a masterclass I took a while back where it involved basically just getting in tune with yourself, like your future self, from about an hour away from the moment of your death. And there was a couple other intervals, like move to a month before your death, a day, a week, or whatever. And while that's not necessarily a hard written future, I didn't particularly like the future I found, so I've kind of been leaving it up as a surprise since then. It's made me very paranoid about things. Like, I miss one of my kids. He's never around anymore, and it felt more like he had died as opposed to like just like estranged or something. And that's like,
wow.
not to get too deep, like it's made me very paranoid. Like whenever that particular kid of mine is doing things that are dangerous, I'm much more overprotective of him now. Things like that.
And that could cause a time loop where your overprotectiveness is what does for him in the end, couldn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
it could turn it into a giant Greek tragedy.
Yeah. But you got to watch out remote viewing your own future. Ed Reardon tried doing that, didn't he? He did it for a few weeks where every day he would remote view the next day. And he said he was like, it started to all blur into one where he couldn't tell whether he'd predicted it or what way causality was going. And like his life got so weird, he said he just had to stop doing it because it really messed with his head.
Yeah, that does sound complex and messy. I don't know if I'd like to try that.
I mean, it's an interesting experiment, isn't it? I'm glad he did it so that we don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I can see how that would get confusing fast. Yeah.
One like really super lame psychic power that I've developed through learning remote viewing is I always know if people are going to reschedule appointments on me. Like when I wake up in the morning, if there's something in the calendar for the afternoon, it just feels like it's not there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll probably do something else. But the problem is, until they get in touch and be like, oh, I'm going to have to cancel. Sorry, you still have to show up just in case you're wrong. But
yeah,
worst superpower ever.
Hey, it's better than no superpowers.
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah. I'm calendar man. So
I've had one
anything
for
else
years where
sorry,
I'm
go on.
really. I was going to say I had something similar for years where I can tell if I'm face to face with someone, I can tell very easily if they're lying, no matter how good a liar they are.
Yeah,
Always,
you can just feel
whatever.
it, can't you?
Yeah, whatever I know to be, the truth of the situation always turns out to be correct on that one.
Yeah. I had that right from being a kid. I was quite a sort of mainstream reductionist, sciencey sort of thinker. I wasn't in touch with my intuition at all or anything, so I was like, oh, gut feelings are just nonsense, I'm going to ignore those. And every time I ignored it, I was wrong and I should have paid attention to it. And every time you ignore your gut on stuff like that, it gives you a lesson in why you shouldn't ignore your gut. If your body tells you somebody's a wrong un, you should fucking listen.
Absolutely.
Do you get that thing where you look in someone's eyes and you can sort of like see what they're like? Just even like still photos of people and stuff.
No, not for me. And I got to be honest, the older I get, the worse my eyesight gets. So everything's fuzzy. Yeah. I wouldn't be any good at that anymore.
Well, I don't think it really depends on the physical eyes, does it? But
No, and to be honest, I might be doing that kind of thing when I'm assessing truthfulness in people I think are lying and stuff. It might be a body language thing or an eye thing, because they always say the eyes are the mirrors to the souls, don't they? So
yeah, the window to the soul.
the window to the
Yeah.
soul, that's the one. Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's sort of a psychic thing going on as well as a body language sort of thing.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. We got another question, which I think lots of people will be interested in, because this is about how to detox after engaging in potentially dangerous practices such as remote viewing. I assume they mean remote viewing messed up stuff that's going to traumatize you, or ET targets where weird stuff happens or whatever. Magic or others. Do you do stuff before or after, or what? I know, Daz, your approach is to just go like, "Oh, I don't believe in any of that. I don't have to do anything." And "Oh, no, I'm really sick. Oh, what's going on?" Like that.
That pretty much is my approach. Yeah, and we do some bad targets. Like I did one 2 weeks ago with future forecasting, which turned out to be the whole P Diddy situation with his
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
child sexual abuse stuff.
I smell baby
That's
oil.
luckily
Lots
enough,
of baby oil.
lots of baby oil, yeah. But luckily enough, my internal processes kind of automatically steered me away from looking at anything really bad, and I was looking at the core people behind it. I knew it was some really sick stuff going on, but my whatever the RV process is and how it works, it didn't allow me to actually see any of that hardcore stuff. It just alerted me that it was real sick caveman type stuff going on.
yeah.
But other than that, I do bad sessions all the time where it's like esoteric or just weird stuff, and literally for me it's just a pure ritual. The moment I write end, for me it's like it is it's just my ritualistic thing of the moment I write end, that's it. I've severed all ties with the target. There's no kind of whispery afterthoughts or anything. It's just ended for me.
That's pretty good. And then you're like, "Oh, I've got really sick again, and I don't know what's wrong."
I only, to be honest, I only think, and it's probably a coincidence more than anything, but I think there's only that possibility of an after effect with one target. And I didn't work the target; I was project manager. And I've talked about this in the past. We did the Havana syndrome target in Hellfire, and I was the project manager. And the guys got absolutely amazing data on it. And then within weeks afterwards, I developed, and I still have, tinnitus. And that might just be a coincidence, but it's a very interesting coincidence for me. I find that happened.
Well, it's funny how these things work, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Josh, do you have a process which you could recommend to listeners, which isn't trapping evil beings in a crystal in your bathroom cabinet and freaking your wife out? Oh, he's gone. Oh, is he back?
He's been magicked away. He's been
He was
magic
here
being
right
affected.
until I asked him, and then
Yeah,
he
right
got
until you asked
cut
the
off.
question. See, that's another coincidence. That's a
It happens a lot, though, doesn't it? When we talk about certain topics and it just gets shut down.
Yeah.
Oh wow, he's probably gone.
As they say, there are no coincidences.
Yeah. Either that or his wife rang. Just as I said, and freak your wife out, his phone probably rang, and it was his wife. I bet you.
Yeah.
Oh well, hopefully he'll come back later.
I have to say though, when I'm or I haven't done it for a long time, but when I did used to practice my classical psychic work, lots of channeling work and stuff, we used to go through quite intricate protection rituals there of of circles of white light, spheres of your whole body's encased in a sphere of white light. We call down angels of protection, in all four corners of the kind of room to protect everyone. So that was quite ritualistic in the classical ways of doing things. But as I said, I don't do that within RV. That's more, the classical side of how I work.
Yeah. There's a lot of that sort of stuff in ceremonial magic as well.
Yeah,
And I think for good reason as well, because yes, there might be weird things out there which will like come and get you, but there's kind of weird things that can happen to you psychologically when you tap into just really weird stuff. It can kind of
yeah,
upset people's minds a bit. And I think very often it's quite hard to unpick, like, well, was it some weird demon freaky deaky
yeah,
beastie thing that came from the RV target? Or is it something that's like some weird manifestation of the subconscious mind that's kind of been set off by,
yeah,
and that can really
yeah,
do a number on
absolutely.
you. And it's
Yeah.
like, you don't need to do remote viewing to go nuts, do you? It's quite common.
No.
So
Yeah. So for the classical stuff, for me, I guess it's like a psychic condom. You put it on just in case.
over the head.
Psychic condom of protection. I should
You
copyright
should
that, shouldn't I?
that, yeah. Josh, did your wife phone and cut you off?
No, that was actually
Just
the entities I keep trapped in the crystals of my phone. They overheated. Shut me out.
Cool. Do you want to have another go? If you get cut off again, I guess it's too spicy.
If I get cut off again, it's just a sign that the CIA knows I'm onto something. There's no other logical explanation there. Well, if I feel like it's something that's like a sort of woo-woo entity besides the crystal in the bathroom trick, there's an exercise I've borrowed from a book called Stealing the Fire from Heaven by Stephen Mace, which involves visualizing building like a cage of fire around yourself, and then just with every breath you start counting them, and as you exhale there's a fire inside you that expands out of the cage and like purges the bad stuff essentially. Or sometimes it's like a minor, I'll feel a weird itchy feeling around the third eye area, and I'll just practice the visualizing exhaling out of the third eye and kind of like blowing it clear. But there's also times where it's just, this is something psychological, and I kind of do introspective work, hemming and hawing, shadow work type stuff, and just kind of like mindfulness my way through it and address it head on, because sometimes it's just your brain acting up and you got to deal with yourself.
Yeah. I think a lot of these things that can mess with us can only mess with us because we've got blind spots and unintegrated bits of shadow and trauma and whatever, and it's all stuff that by definition we don't look at and aren't really properly aware of. So it's really easy for things to come along and kind of prod at us and activate that stuff in us. It's like that to, they can't hurt you unless you let them. But it's a bit of a slippery statement, that, because obviously people aren't going like, oh yes, please, Mr. Entity, please come and be a real pain in my ass. But because you haven't got full visibility on all the content of your mind, it's easy for these things to come and play little tunes on the keyboard of your unresolved trauma. Yay.
Yeah.
This is cheery, isn't it?
But for our listeners out there,
a lot of
go ahead, dude.
Go ahead, Des.
I was just going to say, for the listeners out there, if they're gonna do any practicing of RV or psychic stuff of any kind, it couldn't hurt, to look at any of the classical techniques and do some kind of basic protection for yourself, just in case, and just for your own self-assurance, really.
Yeah, I think self-assurance is part of it, isn't it? Because it comes down to belief driving intent. Like, if you kind of do all these rituals and things to protect yourself, what you're putting out, whatever that is, if there is anything, is like very clearly safe, isn't it? You're kind of identifying with the concept of not being vulnerable because you really convinced yourself you're not by doing all of this angels and whatever.
Yeah.
And it seems everything kind of works on information and intent, doesn't it? So those
Seems to, yeah.
rituals are a way of like strengthening your own belief. I was listening to Laurie Williams on New Thinking Aloud. She recently did an interview about mediumship, which I'd recommend to people because it's really good fun. She tells lots of fun stories. I didn't know that she had such a big history with it, but she was saying her protection is just to say a prayer before, because mediumship, who knows what's going to turn up, and she just prays for let this be kind of like good data that's helpful and bad stuff not to happen and whatever, and that's her process and it works. So there's lots of ways to skin this cat. What I tend to recommend to people, because you quite often see people online like, oh, all this crazy shit's going on, oh, I'm haunted, or this or that, and it's often when people have done a bit of meditation or they've dabbled and they've kind of opened their perception up, and then all this weird stuff started piling on them and they don't know what to do and they're really scared and stuff. And it's like, well, I can't flipping hold your hand through it all because you're just some random person on the internet and I've got dinner to cook and stuff, But my stock response is to do a Google search for setting psychic boundaries and then just go through the results until you find something that doesn't seem really silly to you and doesn't require like Eye of Newton, black candles and a special robe, because there can be stuff that's just simple as like a little invocation of an angel or a prayer or a visualization exercise, or it doesn't need to be fancy, but it's important that it's something that you don't feel silly doing. It's something that kind of resonates with you. So yeah, choose any old thing and just do it every day if you're struggling with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anything else on that topic?
No, I think we covered that very well.
Cool. Well, we've got a few more questions now from Zilka. Which first one is, how do you make sure a front-loaded viewing has good quality?
That's a good question, but is if you're working as a tasker, or
I don't know. That's all the
I would
question
assume.
says.
I mean, if you're a tasker, you should always only task targets that you feel have good feedback anyway. Which is what I call the quality aspect of it. And if it hasn't, then just don't task. If there isn't a level, this is how I work anyway. If there isn't a level of what I call feedback, real world feedback, so that's tangible in some way, then I literally won't task the target front loaded or not really. Front loading having an issue on that, I don't think. And if you do use front loading, where we kind of give the viewer the avenue of information that we want, but we don't tell them anything specific. Front loading should always only be something along the lines of the target is a life, or the target is an event, or the target is a location, or the target is a structure. Anything like that, which is telling them the kind of information you want to receive, but it's not telling them anything specific about the target. So anything other than, if you're telling them the target is an event, or no, let's say a life. If you're telling them the target is a life, you can't then accurately measure their data
It's not inviting anything from the imagination or guesswork. There's like 8 billion people. Could be anybody. You're not. It doesn't immediately set you off going like, oh, I bet it's this person. I bet it's that person.
Yeah, and as long as you leave a huge amount of potential possibilities, then I think your front loading is good. You shouldn't say the target is an object in my bedroom or that kind of thing. That's way too, you start to become way too specific then. It should be very, very vague. And again, the front loading, all it does is says to the viewer, hey, this is the kind of information I want. So don't tell me, if you're telling the person you want life target, then you don't need the viewer then to spend 8 pages describing a location.
Yeah, it's just a time saver, isn't it?
Yes. And it's very useful. We use it a lot in operational work. For example, you guys know that when I'm in future forecasting, I know if I'm working a crypto target, I know I'm working crypto, but it still leaves one in something like, I think, 39,000 different ones out there at the moment. So I have a 1 in 39,000 chance of getting that. But it also allows, because I know I'm working a crypto, it also allows me then to, before I start my session, tailor the RV to use tools within my basket that allows me to describe a crypto, which I wouldn't normally do if I didn't know it was a crypto. I wouldn't know to try to map market data going ahead 2 years, for example, if I didn't know if it was a crypto.
I mean, it's possible to identify a crypto when you're completely blind, but how much session work have you done before you get to the bit where you go, oh, this is a cryptocurrency, isn't it? And then you do,
It's like everything with real world applications using these tools. It's all about time and money. You're trying to condense the time and money you spend on the project, but without compromising the project in any way.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. Oh, sorry, Josh, did you have anything to add on front loading?
No, I think you guys said everything I probably would have said.
This is an interesting one that I think there's something about this from like the SRI kind of era of research. But I'm not sure if this has ever been bottomed out. And the question is, are synesthesia, perfect pitch, or other anomalous traits a sign of strong natural connection? So I guess that means natural psychic ability, which I've certainly heard people suggest that synesthesia is, but I don't know if anybody's done any research to look into that or why it might be.
I think I've heard Dr. Ed May say, maybe on one of the interviews I did with him, that Joe and several of the people that they use are synesthesia people. I'm not sure I've seen any formal research. I think some of the formal research that came out of SRI did kind of indicate that people with creative kind of hobbies or bents around them tend to be good remote viewers. But I don't think they went as specific as traits like autism or synesthesia or any of the other ones. I don't have anything like that myself. I am a creative person, of course. I don't have any. I'm quite sure I don't have any synesthesia kind of stuff. I think I'm slightly, although I've never been tested, I think I'm slightly autistic in that I get lots of my letters and words mixed up.
That's dyslexic, isn't it? Not autistic.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, dyslexic. Yeah.
Yeah, you get all your words mixed up, to be fair.
Yeah. See, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
So I think I've got something there going on, but it's never been formally tested. I just didn't get on at school. I could only draw. That's the only thing I could do. I was good at art.
Well, I think that
is. So I personally think creativity is a massive thing because I'm quite creative. I know Lynn Buchanan's quite creative. I know that the people I work with, Dick, Edward, and Naeem, they all play musical instruments, and like Naeem's his own musician with rap music and all kinds of stuff. So I think that a lot of the people that I've had contact with, Ingo Swan, of course, he's a famous artist and writer and stuff, and including you guys and the people that we work, within, Discord and a few other places, most of the people I think I work with seem to have some kind of creative thing about them in some way.
Is it because creativity kind of comes from the same place as remote viewing data comes out of the subconscious mind or whatever? So people are in the habit of allowing that flow, be it into a paintbrush or a
Yeah.
musical instrument or whatever, you've kind of got the connection there already.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't have to be good at it either. Like the Irva talent show, and talented remote viewers. But I think having a go at creative pursuit and allowing yourself to spam forth wherever.
Well, being good creatively takes time as well. As you guys know, I'm a photographer, and in fact, I'm going away to London tomorrow to photograph a far right demo. And I didn't start off being good at photography. It's taken me many years to learn, the exposure triangle, and to learn to have what we call a creative eye to get the kind of composition in pictures that I do. And I think it's the same with any artistic endeavor. Same with remote viewing, as we know. It's a practice. It's a lifelong practice. Really, you never stop learning.
Yeah.
Josh?
Specifically related to the question, I know that there's several people like myself who have some variation on what the heck is it? Having poor vision, aphantasia. Like I think I went on and I tried that aphantasia test. It wasn't specifically aphantasia I came up with. It was a degree like slightly above that.
Hypophantasia.
Yeah, like hypophantasia or something. So I don't necessarily think that it's an indicator of ability, but I do think that there's a sort of tendency for like neurodivergent people who their brains think in different abstract ways. I think that a lot of them can be more drawn to either hyperfixate on the subject of psi and practice it more in that way. Like, I don't think it's a causal relationship, but I think there's overlap.
I'm just trying to find the link and I can't find it here, so I'm going to have to dig it out later and try and remember to put it in the show notes. But I saw a podcast that was about people who are quite seriously autistic having really strong psi ability, like they were reading numbers off, when they can't see them, there's somebody standing behind them with Uno cards and they're reading the numbers off them. And I thought it's pointing at something, because we all struggle to do numbers, at least lottery numbers. And I thought it's suggestive, because another thing that I don't know if there's again any research backing it up, but an observation I think we've all made is that there's a real disproportionate number of people with ADHD who are remote viewers. There's also a lot of engineers. There's these weird clusters, so that it does seem that there are correlates in terms of how people's brains are wired up that might give them more natural ability, as well as more propensity to explore.
It would be it'd be great to see a
kind
study,
of ideas,
wouldn't
I
it?
suppose.
I had
But
I had that Reddit poll. I think I've mentioned it before, where I put out a general poll of basically asking for people who practice remote viewing, do you happen to be either like diagnosed with ADHD, autism? I think I also added PTSD. I think I might have worded it in a slightly different way. And then I had a mixture of them or not at all. And I believe it was about 75% of the people who responded. I think there was 370 total or so. You'd have to check Reddit to see who responded of that group. But about 75% of them said they did have some form of neurodivergence.
Sample bias.
Could be.
Oh, couldn't it, from it just being people clicked on the post because they do have those things.
Yeah.
A lot of people going like, "Oh, that one's not for me."
I would love to see a formal study done.
But it's interesting, and I think I've noticed Because I mean, the prevalence of ADHD is supposed to be like what 4% or something among the adult population, and is much higher among remote
Yeah.
viewers. I'm sure,
I'm kind of wondering if the people that
but then
can't
ADHD
imagine
itself is a what do you call it? Dodgy idea, because it's just a list of symptoms, and if you tick enough of the things off the list, it's like, oh, you have this disorder. And sometimes that is caused by neurodevelopmental things, but it can also be caused by things like trauma, where the fight or flight part of your brain is putting the executive function bit of your brain on hold, because it's kind of constantly running away from saber-toothed tigers, and it kind of takes control away from the executive function. So then you get ADHD symptoms without it being a neurodevelopmental etiology. It's just you need to heal your trauma, and then you won't have ADHD anymore. But then I think there's also crossover with like PTSD there as well, and all of those labels are kind of pretty suspect. Probably invented as a hideous side effect of the medical industrial complex and the health insurance industry. So, because we shouldn't put too much truck in them.
Yeah. Do you guys think that maybe the people like Josh said that with was it aphantasia? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
They have a problem imaging things, don't they, internally? Do you think that if we did a study on that there might be a possibility that they'd have less noise in their RV session because the imagination wouldn't be in play as much?
I don't know, Daz. You've seen my sessions. They seem pretty noisy.
Yeah, we'd have to. But where's that
when
noise
I
come from
cast-
then? If it's not visual, imagination kind of construct.
But Josh, do you see remote viewing visuals ever?
Extremely
visually?
rarely, in the vaguest sense of it.
Because
Like,
I have vague visuals.
yeah, it's always like more of a sense of knowing, like, if I were looking at it, this is exactly what it would look like. I don't ever like see.
Yeah, because I have heard a couple of people who have no mind's eye, no kind of voluntary mental imagery, say that it's actually great because they do see visuals. So when they see something, they know it's psychic data, or it's the result of some unusual process in their mind. So actually, they do have less noise that presents itself visually, anyway.
I'm just trying to get my head around this a little bit. So, Josh, for example, if I said to you, "Can you visualize a 6-inch Mickey Mouse figure made of plastic in your mind's eye?" Can you not see that?
I guess you'd have to really define see. Like, can I place in my visual field that shape? No, but do I understand the idea of what a 6-inch Mickey Mouse figure would look like? Yes. Like, if I needed to draw a picture of it, I could use that and draw off that.
Yeah. See, the whole thing's really, and I don't know how this is, but it's really alien a concept to me because, like, I can not only see, the 6-inch plastic figure of Mickey Mouse in my head, but if I instantly say to myself, okay, now look at it from the bottom up, or spin it around, look at it from the backside.
Yeah, it says made in China on the bottom of it, doesn't it? It's like embossed into the plastic.
Almost, yeah. But you know what I mean? I can anything I can imagine, I can spin in 3D in my vision and have it's not a clear picture, but there is a picture there from any angle that I desire.
But almost like little hologram in your visual field, you could, or when you say you can.
Either way,
kind of, yes. It's there, but not there.
For me, it's sort of like if you imagine all the stuff you can see through your eyes is on a screen, like a TV screen in your head. It's like there's another one for my mental imagery, and I can visualize stuff over the top of my what my eyes are seeing. But normally there's a couple of other like screens that
Yeah.
I see stuff on, so it's kind of a different place, but it's still a visual experience.
Yeah.
So do you think in
Mine's
pictures in
similar to
general
yours.
then, Daz, or?
Oh, good question. I don't know. Half and half, I would say.
Because mine
Half
is
and
more
half,
like
yes.
one continuous Scrubs monologue. Like, have you seen an episode of that show Scrubs where he's like always like, it's more like that in my head.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I guess we're all different, and maybe that's why I feel that I'm, I just have to create whatever I have to have a creative expression in some way, which is why I do so much, RVM photography, and I funneled all this kind of visual stuff that I get through photography. It's almost like when I'm going along the street, I actually see the picture in my mind's eye before I actually pull the camera up to take the picture. Yeah, so I would have to say I get a lot of pre-visual stuff. Yeah,
That is
so it's
always
really
a
interesting how we're all different.
Yeah, it's always a fun conversation starter too. Like, go ask your friends, how do you think? Do you think in pictures or do you hear stuff, and then just see what they come up with? I've found a split of a lot of different
Yeah.
types.
On another
some
front with this,
people-
guys, I was just sorry. I was just going to say
yeah, you go.
I was speaking to someone the other day that doesn't have an inner voice, and that freaked
That
me out
was
as well.
exactly what I was going to say as well. People who got no inner monologue. How's that work?
Because I have as well as the tinnitus, I have music playing all the time in my head. Whatever the first song of the day I hear, that's it. That's just on repeat throughout the entire day. And I have this voice that's continuously talking to me in my head as well, all day long. So when I spoke to someone the other day and they said, no, I've never had a voice in my head, I was like, what? That's got to be so weird, so quiet.
Well, I guess it's like what Josh was saying with he knows what Mickey Mouse looks like but can't actually see it. Because if you talk to somebody with no inner monologue, you can't tell. They speak perfectly normally. They can use language perfectly normally. But it's just not presenting it. So, but I mean, imagine if you've got no inner visual imagery, no inner monologue. That must be really weird. I'm really, really curious as to what that's like.
Yeah.
I like only recently found out
have an
any
inner
of
monologue.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all inner monologue pretty much.
Interesting.
The closest thing to like a visual field
aphantasia
thing
as
I can see is a gray kind of outline of a thing sometimes.
My wife's got like complete aphantasia. She's got like zero visual imagery. She says the closest she's ever come to having visual imagery is she sort of had a sense of that there was a place where she thought it would be if there was any, but there wasn't, kind of thing.
Wow.
But she's got like everything is all verbal, and she'll have like different points of view, having a discussion with each other, but everything is just words. But then she's really good at words, and I'm much better at pictures. So I guess our thinking style probably carries through to our remote viewing as well as other areas of life.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
When I first found out about aphantasia, I was just like, how do you live? How do you do anything?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But actually, perfectly normally.
Yeah. It's totally alien to me, because I've also spent my entire life as a graphic designer. So I have a conversation with a client, and he'll be like, "Well, I need a logo. It's got to be modern. It's got to say this as a word. It's got to be pointed. It's got to be the color red." The moment I have that information, bang! I have visuals. I have like spiky visuals all over the place, and I'm like, it's not clear, but it's there. It's all this stuff. It's all like bubbling up and happening, and I just have to get it out. To know that there are people out there that don't have that boggles me, really. I have to be honest. I'm like, whoa, how'd you live?
It makes me really want to know what would happen if I took like ayahuasca or DMT or something. Like, I want to know if I would actually be able to hallucinate actual sensory hallucinations of things, or if it would just be like RV, where it's like, oh, I know that if I could see it, there's a giant talking caterpillar there or something.
Yeah.
You got to do it now for science.
Yeah.
Do a GoFundMe.
I have
could
been
do
able
that,
to
couldn't we?
have like
We could fund one.
auditory
Yeah.
hallucinations
We should do a
as I was
GoFundMe to send Josh
falling
to the
asleep.
Amazon
So,
so he can.
yeah,
We could
So he
podcast it.
can. Yeah. Could live stream him getting sexually
do-
assaulted by a fake shaman in the jungle while he's off his face on ayahuasca.
we'll do one of those. We'll do one of those. A lot of YouTube channels get these like joint vacation package deals where like, yeah, let's all chip in. We'll all go to Costa Rica or something. It'll just be that, but we're gonna go to South America to do an ayahuasca trip.
I'd be up for that. Let's do it.
Yeah, why not?
Podcast it.
It would be
We
terrible.
could do it as an
podcasting,
herba
because-
presentation.
But it would be
guys
an
gotta-
awful podcast though, because if we recorded it straight after, we'd all just be sat there like, "Oh God, oh
Yeah.
no,
No,
leave me
we gotta
alone, I
record
can't
it
deal with
during.
anything."
We'll record it during, and we'll just all have like 4 different conversations we're having. Like I'll
But
be
they're just
interviewing the
sound
machine
of
elves,
crying and vomiting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Sometimes it makes you poop.
No one wants to see that on camera.
Let's not podcast our
Yeah,
ayahuasca
let's not podcast
experience.
that after all. Yeah.
Nah.
I mean, Josh hadn't even got a mustache.
yeah,
That's
we'll
true,
make
yeah.
that.
I don't think they probably wouldn't give him any ayahuasca, would they? They'd be like, "Look at that tash.
That's true.
Not for you. Not for you, son."
Yeah. You got to have a mustache to take ayahuasca. You can't even be a remote viewer if you ain't got a mustache.
So I hear.
I've heard that. That is a good Q&A question. Let's do a round table on that. Do you feel like remote viewing is directly tied to the amount of hair someone has? Like, would you say you're a better psychic without hair, Daz, or?
Ah. Can you
Oh,
hear
sorry,
what he's
guys.
saying? He's cut out.
Yeah,
You still
I'm
there?
crying.
Daz? Oh, turn your camera on so I can
Oh.
watch you cry.
I'm still here. Can you not see me?
No, I can't see you.
I see you.
You're gone. Disappeared a while ago.
Really?
Oh, well, as long as Josh can see
You like
hopefully that means
left
we
out of the
can-
room and came
Got
back,
recorded.
and now you're in here with like a
Strangely,
letter
for the
on
first
your
time
head.
ever, I did have a message come up saying your internet connection's a bit dodgy. Never had that before.
Podcast. Oh. Wow. Never mind. Let's do another question. I've heard of burnout and other effects. This is about overtraining. How much is too much? How does tolerance build up? Is it like exercising a muscle? Yes. Right.
Tolerance to what? Like,
Everyone's
Does it
different, aren't they?
specify, or-
And you know, it all depends. Like, I quite often see the post on
Remote
Yeah.
viewing, like your stamina, I think it means, you know, however you can do in a week before you just burned out and
But
start
we're all
missing
different,
everything.
aren't we?
I think doing regular practice, it does increase over time. I think it's very much like athletic training or something. But also like athletic training, if you do too much, you'll give yourself an injury and you'll just have to sit out for weeks or even months and get better. And I'm speaking from experience there, because in my early days of remote viewing, when it was super exciting and you're like, oh my god, holy shit, I can't believe this is real, and it's just like constantly remote viewing without thinking about it, I did burn out really badly, and like I just had to have weeks and weeks where I missed everything, and then I started getting frustrated and pissed off, which obviously wrecks the whole process, because it's not going to work if you go into it with a negative sort of emotional state like that. So it just became a total car crash, and I think I had about 6 weeks where I just totally didn't do any, just did other stuff.
Yeah.
And then came back to it once it felt like a fun idea again, rather than a horrible idea.
Yeah. The last thing you need RV to become is boring or work like. Although I say that from the perspective of a full time employed remote viewer, so it is very work like. But yeah, I haven't had burnout for a long time. But I'm quite wary in what I do. I don't like to do RV 2 days in a row. I literally like to do 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off kind of approach to it. And I've always done that for many years because I'm a bit wary of seeing other people in the past burn out from literally just too much practice.
Yeah, overtraining, I think, is the phenomenon,
Yeah.
isn't it? That if you look that up, that's not a remote viewing thing. That's just a thing. And like elite
Yeah.
athletes can get like the really, I think it's called overtraining syndrome or something, which I'm not saying this happens to remote viewers or anything, because I think you'd have to do absolutely crazy levels of, like, it just wouldn't happen. But people who are pushing their bodies to insane extremes constantly, like, they end up with a sort of metabolic disease or something, or the mitochondria fuck up, or I can't remember what happens. Not sure they even know, but like their career's just over. It's just like the body just is like, I'm not doing it anymore. I refuse, and that's it. It's like, well, you go and get a different job now, mate. So
Yeah. We're all individuals, so I guess whoever's asked the question on this, just keep an eye on yourself. We all have different tolerances. For example, one of the people I'm mentoring at the moment, their average remote viewing session is 2 to 3 hours every single time they do it. And I was quite shocked to learn that because I couldn't cope with that. I couldn't imagine every RV session I did lasted 3 hours. That would
are
be
they doing really
maybe,
long sessions, or are they just sort of?
I
no.
thought if it lasted
No.
for 3 or more hours, you had to call your doctor.
No, it's 4
You'd have
hours.
thought so, yeah.
When I've been trying, at my absolute worst, when I was remote viewing for 2 hours plus every single day, which I did for 2 or 3 months when I was training, which is not sustainable. But I was just like, I'm on such a streak, I'm going to keep going and kind of push through it. And I was just about coping with it. But I was getting obviously really tired. And what I found was I ended up just taking loads and loads and loads of breaks. So a session that might have been an hour and a half was 3 hours because I was dicking about scrolling memes and crap on the internet for 5 minutes here and there, or getting up and doing stuff in the middle of a session, which is fine to do. Like, take breaks. There's literally nothing wrong with taking breaks. Take as many as you like.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, absolutely. Go with your instinct. If you feel you're feeling tired, go get a coffee, go get a banana. Watch some TV for half an hour. Yeah.
When you do too much, you can really feel it, can't you? It's like a special sort of exhaustion.
Yeah.
I feel really drained.
Yeah.
Oh, I yawn before I start.
Now, the weird thing is, if I'm 1 page or 2 pages into an RV session and I yawn, I know that it's going to be a good RV session.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody else talk about their remote viewing yawn. I found, right, when I do Cowboy RV now, I don't have any cooldown routine. I've always sort of said I'm going to train without it, and then it won't become a crutch. But I'll kind of have the mindset of, right, I'm going to do it, and I'll start the audio recorder, and then I'll just involuntarily yawn, and I just almost expect it now, or I forget that it's going to happen, and then I go to read the TRN and the date and stuff, and do a massive yawn. It's like, oh yeah, there we go. But I learned the other day that I can never remember which one's which with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, but it's like fight or flight versus rest and digest, and you want to be in the relaxed, non-stressed state, obviously. And if you do stuff to get you into that relaxed state, it can cause you to yawn. So I wonder if just doing so much remote viewing, you're actually training your body. Oh yeah, I'm about to do remote viewing, so I've got to get into that rest and digest, relaxed state. Now we've kind of conditioned ourselves, which is pretty cool. Oh, I'm going to yawn now. I was yawning so much before we started recording. We had to. Took us about 5 minutes to get going.
Do it. Everybody yawn. Do it now.
But for
Lend us
me
your
with
power.
RV, it's not every time. It's just like
Is it not every time because you yawn when you're going to have a good session, or is it because you don't have a good session unless you yawn? Because
the
you're
first one.
not getting relaxed.
No, it's the first one. I can't. I just know that if I'm a part of the way through and I have a yawn. It's like, oh, this is going to be a good one. And that's just from experience of getting feedback at some point and seeing how it went. But for me, it's like 1 in 10, 1 in 20 RV sessions that I'll pick that up.
Well, do you note it down? Yawn. No margin.
I don't, and that's a good point. Maybe I should from now on. It's just something that I've recognised, but I haven't made proper notes on.
All right. Well, people can check this out, and you can do this exercise if you just want to relax. I think for the remote viewers and psychics and whoever else listening, what you do is you stick your finger in your ear, pull down gently, and then do little circles, and then do it on the other ear. And apparently your vagus nerve goes through your ears or your ear canals or something, and it causes your nervous system to temporarily calm down. And I tried it, and it did make me yawn. And so perhaps we can try sticking our fingers in our ears and wiggling them gently before we remote view and see if it improves our results.
It's worth a try.
You gonna
And
include
everybody
these
needs to video
findings in your
themselves
herba
doing it as
presentation?
well, like that.
We'd all look like Marvin the Martian. Josh, don't do that right now, mind. Not in the car.
Oh, I've already been yawning.
He's not there.
All right. Oh, one more thing on overtraining is when you start feeling really tired in session, like, oh, I'm running out of steam here. And I learned this from Birdie's 2001 era TDS training videos that are up on YouTube, that actually if you eat chocolate, you can buy yourself another 10 minutes. In my first year or two of remote viewing, I just had like bags and bags of chocolate covered peanuts and was just like eating loads of it. And I just got fat. So it is only a short-term hack. It's not very good for you, but it does work. And going back to the negative effects things as well, sometimes you can just feel really drained after doing woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
And again, just have some chocolate.
I think I counter that in the fact that I have this. It is kind of like a ritual for myself, whereas I always make myself a tea or a coffee, and as I'm RVing, I'm sat there drinking the tea or coffee.
I've got a giant teacup that's like huge, probably holds about a pint of tea or more. So, and I get one of those, and then I'm not going to run out of tea, even if I end up having a long session.
Good idea. Yeah, I like that.
I've got no regrets about the giant teacups, but maybe that's a British thing. Wow, what have we got next? Oh, hang on, how are we doing for time? Oh, we've gone over the hour. Do you guys do one more, or what's?
I'm going over the hill right now.
Oh yeah, well I've got a scary one to end on a Halloween note.
Yeah, perfect for Halloween.
Except it's not It's not really funny. Because it is, what's the worst effect you got direct knowledge of someone having from remote viewing? And I would say a full-blown psychotic episode that involved hospitalization and getting sucked into the medical psychiatric pipeline for people to go off the deep end, which is obviously not good, not common, but it happens occasionally.
Okay.
So top that.
I think I might be able to. I got loads actually.
Bro.
But I've worked all those missing people cases and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So the worst one of those, I would say, was seeing and feeling the entire crime from the person committing the crime and then the victim, and then my perspective all at once, of a parent that got rid of their very young baby by chucking them in a dumpster.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had experiences like that as well, and I think it's you learn not to feel that stuff.
Yep.
You were mentioning earlier that you kind of dodged that on the Diddy target,
Yep.
but early on in my career,
Yep.
I was using a certain target pool online that I won't name, that has some really fucked up traumatic targets in. Like, I won't say what. But I was pulling them at random, and I got 2 back to back, which were both mass casualty incidents with a lot of suffering and upset. And
Yeah.
I hadn't spoken to anybody in my life about remote viewing or any of the weird stuff that I was getting into, because I kind of didn't quite, I wasn't fully convinced it was real, even though I was doing it. I was still like, what is all this? This can't be real. And then had that experience, and I was just lying there in bed, like wide awake, staring at the ceiling in the dark, just like, oh my god. I was absolutely traumatized. For years after that, I would always miss targets that had any death in them at all, even like nice deaths, just like nope, no death at all. It completely like built scar tissue over that, and I had to work really hard to get any ability to describe death back. And I still can't do nasty stuff anymore. I just miss it. What happens though is I draw a hot air balloon. My stage 2 is all like balloons rising up into the air, and if I start getting a load of balloon stuff, I'm like, I'm being a wimp about avoiding a death event, aren't I? Because it's
But
really consistent.
at least you know, don't you? And you can record that as as part of what the target probably is.
Well, and I re-prompt myself then and go, like, come on, put your big boy trousers on and go and see what it is that you don't want to look at, and then quite often can do it then,
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah, it took a while. But yeah, that was unpleasant, but wasn't like getting hospitalized or anything. It was just traumatic.
All that kind of stuff can be traumatic, especially early on in anyone's RV career or training kind of. And to be honest, it's kind of hard because you kind of have to expose yourself to that kind of thing a little bit, because you need the experience to better yourself. So it's a
that was
very
my
hard
take on it. I thought
line.
it was, that's a good idea. I should do these things, and then I've done it. But actually, I ended up setting myself back because I ended up having sort of too much too soon in a way.
Yeah, it's a very fine line that you walk with that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Would you say, in order to train that it would be best to build up slowly and start off with stuff that, if you're somebody's mentor setting them targets, that you should start off with targets that are only a little bit traumatic and kind of build up to the mass casualty?
You should, but I'm just trying to think of my current target pool for my people I'm mentoring. I do have, I literally do have targets, probably not in the first 10 or 20, but after that, I do have things like, the JFK assassination and things like that. So starting to introduce, trauma
That's not
and
too
death.
bad though, isn't it? That isn't
No.
like large numbers of people burning to death.
Yes.
It's not.
But I do have like the Hindenburg and stuff like that. I can't remember how early on that is. That's probably about in the 50s, 40s, or 50s.
I hope none of them are listening to this and you're spoiling all the targets for them.
Well, it's a big pool. It's 130 targets, so
Oh no! When the next bunch of homework you're going to get back, there'll be like 5 people who have written like AOL Hindenburg, AOL Hindenburg all the way through it.
That'd be Mark. Mark,
They're going to just start panicking after they get to target 21. Like, oh god, is this it?
Don't do it.
But yeah, I totally agree. Traumatic targets, and I have several because I did hundreds, and there are, I would say there's probably about 10 out of the hundreds that I did that for some reason I can't understand why they struck a chord with me, and they're in my head, and I can't. I will never forget their names and the experiences I have for those. As I said, it's not a lot, but there's probably about 8 or 10 of those targets that I still remember the names of the people, the situations that I recorded of them having their things. And it's forever stuck in my subconscious there.
Yeah.
I guess it's like PTSD. Is a bit. I guess I could class that as a bit of trauma along the journey.
I once got tasked somebody who had PTSD, and the tasker wanted to know whether they, like, what was wrong with them, because they were an ex-military person, and there was potentially they were abusing their significant other and making all sorts of threats and stuff, and the tasker was trying to work out, like, how serious is this danger from this individual. And that was a really interesting experience, to be in that guy's head and experience what it was like kind of being assaulted by stuff in your own mind that's kind of coming at you. And it really gave me increased empathy and compassion for people who are in that situation, because obviously, like, this guy's dangerous and mistreating people, and you could just go like, oh, he's a bad person. But then when you actually experience it from the inside, it's like, no wonder he's acting in an insane way, because his inner experience is really hard to deal with and really awful. And I'm glad I remember that vividly, and I'm glad I had that experience. And I think that was, like, it wasn't traumatic, but it was, like, really educational. This Halloween stuff is supposed to be fun, isn't it? That was
not traumatic.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll try again next Halloween.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've gone well over
we can wear
our time,
costumes
haven't we?
next time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We could dress up as zombies next time.
And Josh can
Is
wear a fake
there,
moustache.
Yeah, that'll be my costume.
A big gringo moustache he needs.
Oh yeah.
I guess while we're closing
Right.
up, is there anything you guys want to rep? Anything you got coming up?
Definitely
Irons in the fire?
Cool. Well,
Speeches
that
at
is
Irva?
it
Good
for
question.
this episode then. Yeah, they are. We've got quite a lot of really good questions.
Yeah,
But we're
really
sending
insightful
by,
questions.
Crucifixion off of Discord, and we've got absolutely tons of them left, but there's some really interesting ones. So next time we do a Q&A chit chat sort of episode, hopefully we'll get through some more of those.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, look forward to it.
right, okay, well, good night everyone, goodbye, thanks for listening. We'll see you
Take
next
care,
time.
everyone. Goodbye.
Messages out of other dimensions, penetrating mind-sucking aliens. Have you ever felt like this, right?
Have you ever had an extreme deity just come arrest you with John and Shredder?
There's something about started